The classroom was loud, laughing, arguing, ordinary, until the windows went black. Not shattered, not cracked, just swallowed by shadow. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. That was when the floor vibrated. Students froze as a low, mechanical sound crawled through the walls, like something massive breathing on the other side. Desks trembled. A girl screamed. The door melted inward, folding like soft metal, and shapes stepped through, tall, armored, not human. An alien army. Weapons charged. Red lights scanned faces. A voice echoed in a language that made heads ache and hearts race. This wasn't a raid. This was an execution. Everyone panicked. Everyone, except her. She sat in the last row. Small, quiet. The girl nobody remembered answering questions. The girl teachers called absent, even when she was there. While soldiers raised their weapons. While students begged and cried. While the first name was marked for death. The human girl stood up. No fear in her eyes. No rush in her movement. And for the first time since the invasion began, the alien commander hesitated. Because something about her smile said one thing clearly. They had stormed the wrong classroom. The silence after she stood was heavier than the screaming that came before it. 43 students packed into the classroom, breaths shallow, bodies rigid. Some were half-crouched behind desks. Others clutched phones they had forgotten to drop. A few were crying openly now, tears streaking down faces lit by the red glow of alien weapon sights. The soldiers didn't fire. They were tall, well over 2 meters, encased in angular armor that looked grown rather than built. Plates shifted subtly as they moved, like muscles beneath skin. Their helmets had no eyes, only slits of pulsing light that swept across the room in precise arcs. The commander stood at the front, broader than the rest, its armor etched with symbols that seemed to crawl when you stared too long. Its weapon hummed at a frequency that made teeth ache. Subjects identified, it announced, the translated words grinding out of a device mounted at its throat. Human adolescence. Low threat. High utility. A boy near the window sobbed. Please, he whispered. Please, I don't want to die. The commander turned its head slightly. Termination is not required for all. The implication was worse. The human girl was still standing. Her name was Mira. At least, that was what her school record said. She had transferred 3 times in 4 years. No disciplinary notes. No achievements. No close friends. Teachers describe her with the same phrase, again and again. Quiet but polite. She was invisible by design. Mira took 1 step into the aisle. A rifle snapped toward her instantly. The nearest soldier reacted faster than any human could have, barrel aligned with her chest, finger tightening on the trigger. Warning, the commander said. Seat. Down. Mira didn't. She looked around the room instead. At the overturned desks. At the cracked ceiling where dust still drifted down in thin lines. At the faces, terrified, confused, pleading without words. Her gaze lingered on a girl near the front who was clutching her arm, blood seeping between her fingers where a shard of glass had cut her. The girl's eyes met Myra's, wide and glassy. Mira nodded once. Just once. Then she spoke. You scanned us wrong, she said quietly. The translation device hesitated, then repeated her words in the alien tongue. The commander tilted its head. Explain. You're looking for soldiers, Mira continued. Her voice was steady, almost gentle. For resistance leaders. For weapons. She took another step forward. Gasps rippled through the class. But this isn't a military target, she said. It's a classroom. Incorrect, the commander replied. Human strategy often conceals as weakness. A corner of Myra's mouth lifted. You're right about that. The air shifted. Not physically, nothing dramatic, no shockwave or flash, but something changed all the same. The commander seemed to sense it. Its grip on the weapon tightened. The soldier's formation adjusted subtly, barrels tracking her movement with microscopic precision. State your designation, the commander demanded. Mira stopped walking. She was close enough now that the red targeting lights painted her uniform in soft, flickering dots. One hovered over her heart, another over her forehead. My designation doesn't matter, she said. But your timing does. The commander paused. That pause, less than a second, was the first real mistake. Mira moved. To the watching students, it looked like she simply stepped aside. A blur. Nothing more. The shot fired anyway. The energy bolt tore through the space where her head had been a heartbeat earlier and slammed into the wall, detonating a section of reinforced concrete in a shower of sparks and dust. Screams erupted as chunks rained down. Before the echoes faded, Mira was already in motion again. She kicked a fallen desk, not toward the soldiers but at the ceiling. The impact jarred something loose. A strip of lighting crashed down, exploding in a burst of sparks directly in front of the nearest soldier's visor. The soldier staggered back, blinded. Mira grabbed the wounded girl by the arm and yanked her behind a row of desks. "Stay down," she whispered. "Pressure on the cut." The girl stared at her. "Itch, how do you now?" Mira said, firmer. Another shot fired. Then another. Energy bolts, scorched walls, desks, the floor, always just behind Mira, just beside her, never quite catching her. She was counting, timing breaths, steps, shots. The commander barked a sharp command. Two soldiers split off, flanking toward the back of the room to cut off her escape. Mira didn't run. She reached in her pocket and pulled out something small and dark. A coin, maybe. She flicked it into the air. It arced, spinning. The commander's targeting system locked onto it instantly, registering a sudden metallic anomaly. 3 rifles fired at once. The coin vaporized. So did the fire suppression system above them. Foam and chemical mist exploded from the ceiling, flooding the room in thick, blinding white. Alarm shrieked. Sensor screamed false readings. For the first time since entering, the alien soldiers lost visual. Mira vanished into the fog. "Locate the female," the commander roared. "Do not let her." Something slammed into the back of its knee joint with precise, brutal force. The commander dropped to one leg, and in the chaos, as students huddled together and the room dissolved into smoke and panic, a terrifying truth began to dawn on the alien army. This girl wasn't improvising. She was executing a plan she had rehearsed a long time ago. The foam clung to everything, desks, walls, armor, thick and choking, hissing softly as it spread. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Human screams blurred into one long, trembling sound. The alien commander tried to rise. Its armor whined in protest as damaged servos fought to realign. Diagnostic symbols flared across its internal display. Joint instability, sensor failure, tactical confusion. Impossible. No unaugmented human should have been able to strike that joint. The angle was wrong. The force insufficient. The timing. A shadow moved through the mist. Too fast. The commander swung its weapon blindly and fired. The blast tore through empty air. Something struck the barrel from the side a heartbeat later, sharp and precise. The rifle spun away, clattering across the floor. The commander roared and lashed out, armored fingers snapping shut around nothing. Mira slid past it, low and silent, her breath controlled, her movements economical. She didn't waste energy. She never had. She reached the far wall and pressed her palm against it. For anyone else, it would have been a dead end. For her, it was a map. She counted 3 seconds. Then she pulled. A panel popped loose, revealing a narrow maintenance recess barely wide enough for a person. She slipped inside, just as a plasma bolt scorched the space where her head had been. Inside the recess, it was dark, quiet. Mira closed her eyes. Her heart rate slowed. Her breathing evened out. Phase 2, she thought. The soldiers were shouting now, their language sharp and metallic, layered with overlapping commands. They were reorganizing, forming overlapping fire zones, switching to thermal, recalibrating for human unpredictability. Too late. Mira reached into her pocket again. This time, she pulled out a thin strip of folded polymer with faint markings along its edge. She snapped it in half. The strip went dead. Across the room, the soldiers' HUDs flickered. Not off. Not fully. Just wrong. Friend or foe markers lagged by half a second. Range estimates fluctuated. Audio filters misaligned. turning screams into echoes and echoes into threats. The commander snarled, trying to override the interference. Ignore the female. Secure captives. Two soldiers turned toward the huddled students. Mira was already moving. She burst from the recess, sprinting along the wall, boots barely touching the floor. A desk flew as she kicked it sideways, slamming into one soldier's legs and toppling it. She vaulted over the desk without breaking stride, landed, and slammed her elbow into a gap beneath the soldier's arm. The armor cracked. A sound like breaking glass filled the air, followed by a wet, alien gasp. The second soldier fired wildly. The shot hit the ceiling, triggering another cascade of debris. Mira ducked, rolled, and came up behind it, grabbing a protruding cable at the back of its helmet. She yanked. The soldier collapsed instantly. The students watched in stunned silence, terror giving way to something else, something fragile and dangerous. Hope. No, no. This isn't real, someone whispered. This can't be real. Mira glanced at them. Stay together, she said. Don't run unless I say so. How do you know how to fight them? A boy cried. Mira didn't answer. The commander finally stood, its damaged leg locking into place with a grinding snap. Foam dripped from its armor. Its voice was colder now, stripped of all pretense. You are not a civilian, it said. You are not untrained. Mira faced it across the ruined classroom. No, she agreed. I'm not. The commander activated a different weapon, shorter, heavier, pulsing with a dull blue light. A shock weapon, close range, designed to disable without killing. You will be taken alive, it said. Mira exhaled slowly. Then you really didn't read the brief, she replied. She reached down and picked up a fallen alien rifle. The commander laughed, a harsh, static-filled sound. You cannot use our weapons. I know, Mira said. She slammed the rifle butt first into the floor. The power cell ruptured. The explosion wasn't large, but it was perfectly placed. A concussive wave ripped outward, smashing desks into walls and hurling the commander backward into the whiteboard with bone-rattling force. The board shattered. Symbols and equations exploded into fragments. The commander hit the ground hard. Mira staggered, ears ringing, vision blurring for a moment, but she stayed on her feet. The soldiers hesitated. That hesitation cost them. Mira turned to the students. Now, she said, move. Back hallway. Left turn. Don't stop. They ran. Shoes pounded. Desk scraped. Someone tripped, was hauled back up by another pair of hands. Fear gave them speed. Trust gave them direction. The commanders struggled to rise again. Mira walked toward it, step by step. You don't understand humans, she said quietly. You think our strength is in numbers. In weapons. She stopped just out of its reach. But we survived because we learned something else. The commander looked up at her, sensors struggling to focus. And what is that? It demanded. Mira leaned closer, her voice barely audible over the alarms. We learned how to look harmless. Her hand closed around the shock weapon, and the classroom lights finally went out completely. The blackout swallowed the room. Not a flicker, not a dimming. One breath the classroom existed. Foam, smoke, shattered desks, and the next it was gone, replaced by a darkness so complete it felt heavy. The alien commander's sensor screamed. Infrared failed. Motion tracking stuttered. Electromagnetic readings spiked and collapsed in erratic waves. The shock weapon in Myra's hand vibrated, reacting to something it couldn't interpret. Mira didn't move. She stood perfectly still, counting heartbeats in the dark. 1, 2, 3. The commander lunged. Its massive frame crashed forward, armored hands closing on empty air as Mira slipped aside by inches. She moved with the room, not through it, memorizing where every desk had been, every fallen panel, every crack in the floor. She had mapped this place weeks ago. The commander roared and swung blindly, striking a desk and shattering it into splinters. Foam and debris filled the air. Mira ducked under the arc and drove the shock weapon into the exposed joint at the base of its neck. The weapon discharged. Blue light flared for a split second, painting the room in frozen shadows. The commander convulsed, systems overloading as the shock tore through neural relays designed for creatures twice her mass. It collapsed to one knee again, but it didn't fall. The commander slammed its fist into the floor, cracking concrete, using the impact to stabilize itself. Its voice emerged distorted, furious. "You were placed here," it snarled. "A sleeping weapon. Human deception." Mira stepped back, breathing hard now. The fight was catching up to her. Every muscle burned. Her ears rang. Her lungs tasted like chemicals and dust. "I didn't choose this place," she said. "I chose the timing." The commander's armor shifted. Panels along its shoulders opened, revealing smaller ports, micro-drones preparing to deploy. Myra's jaw tightened. She reached in her pocket one last time. Empty. For the first time since the invasion began, she felt something close to fear. The drones launched. They buzzed through the darkness like a swarm of angry insects, lights flickering to life as they searched. One brushed past her cheek, close enough that she felt the heat. Mira ran. She vaulted over a fallen desk, slid across the floor, and slammed into the wall just as a drone detonated where she had been. Shrapnel tore through the air. Pain lanced through her shoulder. She bit back a scream. Too slow, she thought. Another drone locked on, its light fixing on her chest. A scream cut through the darkness. "Hey!" The drone jerked mid-air, recalibrating toward the sound. A student. Myra's blood went cold. "No!" she shouted, but it was already too late. The drone streaked toward the voice. Mira moved without thinking. She sprinted, leapt, and threw herself between the drone and the sound. The explosion threw her across the room. She hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from her lungs, pain flaring white-hot through her side. The world narrowed to ringing and darkness at the edges of her vision. Somewhere, a student was crying her name. Mira pushed herself up on trembling arms. The commander loomed through the dark, one step at a time. "You are inefficient when you protect others," it said. "This is why humans lose." Mira laughed, a short, broken sound. Blood coated her teeth. "No," she said hoarsely. "It's why we don't." She dragged herself to her feet, every movement a fight. Her shoulder hung uselessly. Her vision blurred. The commander raised its weapon for the final time. And then, the floor beneath it gave way. With a thunderous crash, a section of concrete collapsed, dropping the commander waist-deep into a maintenance shaft Mira had weakened earlier. Stress fractures she'd noticed during routine drills, measurements she'd taken in her head long before the invasion. The commander roared, struggling to free itself. Mira staggered toward the edge of the hole. "You think I was placed here?" she said, voice shaking but fierce. "You think I was bait?" She looked down at the trapped alien. "But this school," she whispered. "This was my cover." She raised the shock weapon again, hands trembling. The commander's voice dropped, something like realization seeping through its fury. "What are you?" Mira hesitated. For the first time, she didn't have a clean answer. She thought of the transfers, the false names, the training that never ended, the orders that said observe, not engage, the promise that one day she'd get to be normal. "I'm tired," she said quietly. She pulled the trigger. The shock weapon discharged directly into the exposed systems beneath the commander's armor. Light flared, brighter than before, followed by a deafening crack as power cascaded out of control. The commander went still. Smoke rose from the shaft. Mira dropped the weapon and collapsed to her knees. Around her, emergency lights flickered back to life, casting the ruined classroom in harsh red and white. She looked up and froze. The hallway beyond the classroom was no longer empty. Dozens of alien silhouettes filled the smoke beyond the broken door. Reinforcements. And they had all seen what she had done. Myra's chest heaved. Pain throbbed through her shoulder, leg, every joint, every muscle. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by exhaustion so sharp it almost felt like cold fire. Yet despite the agony, she stood. She had to. The classroom beyond the collapsed commander was a war zone. Desks lay shattered. The foam from the suppression system still hissed in thin streams. Dust clung to everything. Her students were huddled together, trembling, wide-eyed, but alive. That was enough for a moment. Then she saw them, the reinforcements. Dozens of alien soldiers poured into the hallway. Their weapons glowed red, scanning, targeting, calculating. Their movement was precise, synchronized, machines with a single goal. The hallway was too narrow for them all at once. Myra's mind raced. She reached down and grabbed the nearest desk, dragging it across the doorway. Metal legs scraped against the floor. Concrete dust rose in clouds. It wasn't much, but it bought her a few seconds. Seconds were all she needed. Her eyes scanned the room for anything that could be used. Electrical boxes hung from the ceiling, exposed wires twisted in the chaos. She ripped one free and yanked a live wire down to the ground. Sparks shot out, igniting the foam residue. Flames licked up quickly, smoke billowing, obscuring the hallway entrance. A few of the alien soldiers fired blindly. Sparks and debris exploded around them. Their formation faltered. Mira didn't wait. She sprinted past her students. "Stay low. Follow me," she shouted. Her voice was steady, commanding. Every ounce of fear she felt was buried deep, masked by the certainty of survival. They moved together, a single line, weaving through the destroyed classroom and toward the service doors at the back. The smoke hid their movement. Mira led them through the narrow corridors, counting heartbeats, measuring steps, anticipating every patrol. The aliens adapted fast, but Mira had already set her traps. Overturned desks, wires, broken pipes. Every obstacle became a hazard. One soldier tripped over a pipe and slammed into another, sending them both crashing to the floor. Still, she knew it wouldn't be enough. There were too many, and reinforcements kept coming. She needed an escape, not just survival. The stairwell at the end of the corridor was their only chance. Mira bolted, students in tow. She reached the door, pulled it open, and froze. The stairwell was not empty. A squad waited, weapons raised, standing silent in the smoke-filled shadows. Mira swallowed, assessing. Her students were panicked, looking at her for guidance. She had one choice: buy them enough time to escape, or face impossible odds herself. She stepped forward. "Go," she shouted, pointing toward a secondary exit she had spotted during a routine campus inspection. The students hesitated. She didn't give them a chance to argue. The first student ran, then another. Then all of them were sprinting toward the exit, adrenaline-fueled, stumbling but moving. Mira stayed behind. The aliens noticed her immediately. Red targeting lights scanned her, weapons leveled. She could feel the tension, the calculations, the expectation that she would fall. Mira didn't run. She raised the shock weapon. The first blast knocked 2 soldiers off their feet. The second one shattered a set of armor joints, sending the third crashing into the stairwell wall. She moved fluidly, every strike calculated, every motion exploiting the smallest flaw. She was a shadow, untouchable, unstoppable. But there were too many. Even she could not hold them all forever. Then she remembered the explosive she had hidden in the chemistry lab earlier. Small, nearly undetectable, triggered by remote. She had no time to retrieve them. But she didn't need to. She could use what was already around her. With a swift motion, she yanked a broken pipe from the wall, twisted it, and slammed it into a fuse box. Sparks flew. Electrical systems overloaded. Fire alarms blared. The stairwell shook with the force of the power surge. The aliens faltered again. Some staggered, confused. Others attempted to reboot sensors, but the smoke, the fire, the chaos was perfect cover. Mira didn't wait for the fight to continue. She sprinted toward the stairwell exit, barely noticing the burns on her arm or the blood that streaked her uniform. The students had reached the emergency exit. They turned back, eyes wide, and saw her emerge from the smoke, weapon raised. Their hope surged, a fragile flame in the middle of terror. Together, they ran. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them. Shouts, heavy boots, energy weapons, but Mira led them through the service tunnel she had memorized, a network few knew existed. They emerged outside, under the cold night sky, the distant stars blinking silently above. The school behind them smoldered. Flames licked at windows. Smoke rose in dark columns. Myra's students collapsed onto the ground, exhausted but alive. They looked at her with awe, fear, gratitude, and disbelief all at once. She fell to her knees as well, gasping for air. Pain lanced through her body, but she ignored it. One thing mattered. They had survived. From a distance, she could hear sirens approaching. Not the aliens, but human emergency response. Reinforcements had arrived. Help! Rescue! Mira looked up at the night sky. She felt the weight of the moment. The lives she had saved, the invisible hand she had wielded against an impossible foe. She allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The aliens had stormed her classroom. They had expected fear, chaos, and helplessness. They had found a human girl who was unseen, underestimated, and unstoppable. And in the end, that was enough. The students whispered among themselves, asking